Okay, everyone, welcome to the conversation. Outspoken Opinionated. Of course, I am your host, Edwin Maya. Today, we have a great conversation here tonight. It's going to be super dope. Again, welcome to the conversation. Outspoken Opinionated. I am your host, Edwin Maya, and it's another Thursday here in our, what I would say, in our conversation land. Of course, we're trying to make sure that everything works out well. It's Thursday. This is what we do. The Conversation Outspoken Opinionated is on Facebook, it's on Instagram, and of course, it's on YouTube TV. And as well, we're exclusively airing on the Live Podcast Network. So if you haven't downloaded a Live Podcast Network, we say go to your Instagram store, go to your Apple store, go to your Google store, download a Live Podcast Network or any other platform that you use podcast, and you will find The Conversation Outspoken and Opinionated. So today, I know a lot of you are watching this. It's a great Thursday, and we're going to have a conversation about self-love. We're going to have a conversation about love, the things that we can do to prepare ourselves so that when we do find somebody, we'll be able to, do the good things that we're supposed to do. So without further ado, I want to invite my guest, Ms. Delarue Brumskine, who's here with us today. And thank you for being here.
It's an absolute pleasure. Anytime you call, I'm always ready.
I am super excited because I remember we had this conversation. I don't know, I probably like maybe that I've been like probably 4 or 5 years ago.
It seems like it was just yesterday, but I think it
Yeah,
was the first year of your podcast, if I'm not
yeah.
mistaken.
It was the first season when we did this. Now we're in season 7.
Wow.
We're in season 7 having this conversation.
Congratulations again.
I am super excited. Thank you so much for you always being here for us and always about to share knowledge. So people, let me tell you. If y'all don't know, now you're about to know. Because they're about to tell some of you how to act. Because y'all don't know how to act.
Yeah.
Delarue, tell the people who you are, what you do, how they can contact you, and all that good stuff.
All right, awesome. So my name is Delarue Brumskine, and I'm a licensed master social worker, which just means I have a master's degree in clinical social work. I'm a trained therapist, and I also work as a coach. So my practice kind of is twofold. So I like to work with individuals and I also like to work with groups. So the group work is usually done in corporations. So for the clinical one-on-one, it's your traditional counseling, or it could be more coaching. So the difference between counseling and coaching is like with counseling, we're looking at kind of like causality, like what's underneath a lot of the challenges that you're having. Whereas with coaching, we're looking more at symptomology. How are the issues manifesting and how can we resolve it? It's more short term, more solution focused, really focusing more on trying to get you to feel better. And then when you're ready, we can do a deep dive to do the therapeutic work. And for some people, they don't need the therapeutic work. And so coaching is very, very valuable. Right. But anyway, I also do a lot of consulting work for government agencies in the health and social welfare spaces. And, but I absolutely have a passion for self-care because I have been through a lot as a human being. I have been in the helping profession for almost 15 years now, and that's postgraduate years. And so throughout my career, I experienced burnout at least twice. And what I realized was the underlying cause of these bouts of burnout was that I was not practicing self-care. And then to go a little deeper and be a little bit more vulnerable, I wasn't practicing self-care because I really wasn't very solid in my self-love. So it's perfect that we're going to talk about this. I'm actually getting ready to release my first print book. It's called Thriving Through the Storms. Yes, it's a self-care guide for helping professionals, but the material in there can really be applied to anyone. I just really focused on the helping professionals because those are the people who I'm in the trenches with, but anybody can read it. So it'll be available on Amazon soon. But I will share my link with EJ at some point, and you guys can sign up for like either pre-sale or just to be notified once the book hits the stores.
So thank you again for being here with us, covering the power of self-love, creating a foundation for healthy relationships. And when I was meeting with my little team, which is like me and 2 other people, I said I wanted us to do February for us to focus on love, but not really focusing on the relationship aspect, because I feel it's like when February 14 comes, if there are people who are excited, they're getting gifts, they're getting flowers, and then there are these other people who are just like, okay, so what is wrong with me? Why is it that everybody else around me is experiencing this thing, but I don't experience this? I actually have met 3 people in my lifetime who said they have never experienced love. And that was very confusing to me. I'm like, what? You mean you never like they said no. And so I started to do my understanding and I realized that the best thing that we can give ourselves is to first love ourselves. And I said, I know when we were talking about, I said, I know the right person to have this conversation with. So I really want to have this conversation with you because I feel it's like based on your career, the things that you've done, you've been vulnerable with us when we first did the episode about different things that you've gone through. And so how does self-love affect the way we can engage with others?
Okay, so that's perfect. So, um, let me see how I want to kind of couch the conversation is I want to kind of use a definition for self love that everybody can kind of relate to, right? And this
Okay.
is not out of Webster. This is based on my experiences and my professional expertise. So for me, self love is knowing what your needs are and being willing to do what you must to have those needs met, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, a romantic relationship or a friendship requires you to understand what your partner or friends needs and then being willing to do what is necessary to meet those needs. So you can see that if you're not able to meet your own needs, you'll have a difficult time being able to discern what other people need and also to actually take the corrective steps or to take the steps necessary to meet those needs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And understanding that I'm not saying like in other relationships, so in relationships outside of yourself, it's not about kind of magical thinking of guessing what other people need, right? But sometimes when people are telling you I need A, they might need A plus a little bit of B. And you have to use some level of discernment, some understanding of that person to really kind of deliver what it is that they're saying that they want from you in the relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this is why it's important to be able to attune to yourself. To attune to yourself means to be on a wavelength with yourself, a level of self-understanding, be able to tap in energetically to what it is that you desire. You know how sometimes you want to eat something, like you're hungry, but you're not sure what you want to eat?
Mm-hmm.
That's that feeling of not really being attuned. Because if you're attuned, you know you're hungry, you know what you want to eat, and you know the steps necessary to create that meal. Right? So not being attuned is not like having a lack of self-knowledge, but you're not really tuned in, right? And so when you're not tuned in, you can't take the steps necessary to deliver. And so if you can't do that for yourself with some level of proficiency, there's no way you're going to be able to do it for someone else on a consistent basis. And relationships require that. You might be able to do it in the beginning, because you're hyper vigilant about the needs of others in the beginning because you want them to see you in a certain way. You want to put your best foot forward. But relationships require longevity and they require consistency. And so if being attuned to yourself, it does not feel normal, being attuned to someone else over a long period of time is going to feel like labor. And then you're going to get tired and then you're
Mm.
going to tune out.
Okay, so you said something that made me think because growing up as a kid, I had this thing where all the adults around me were always used to be upset. If you don't tell EJ to eat, EJ will not eat. Like I can go the whole day and I'm fine. And I always used to tell. I remember I used to tell my aunts. I said, "What? What is hungry? What happened to you when you say you were hungry?" And they'd be like, "What do you mean?" I said, "I don't know." So that's why I can go the whole day and maybe go at night and maybe just eat a little snack and I'm fine. But when I when I start to redefine myself and understand who I was as a person and start going to therapy and really, really defining myself and doing the work on me, I start to understand, okay, you might not have a feeling, but there are certain things that you have to do. And so when you're in tune with yourself, you know your body. You know when you need to drink, you know when you're thirsty, you know when you need this, you know how you need love and all that kind of stuff. And so now that you said it, just by the way, I'm like, wow, that is so true. Once you're in tune with yourself, you start to pick up the things that you like and the
Yeah,
things that you don't
exactly.
like, and all those things work in favor with you. But then when we're talking about self-love, I've also noticed, that, I mean, I would really appreciate if you can really get into this. It's like what happens always, I have noticed, is that when people find themselves and do the work on themselves, the people around them aren't used to this new person. What happened?
Well, you just said it. You're not the same person. You've evolved. You literally are not the same person. And people usually react negatively to your growth because the person that they've known and loved to some extent has passed away. Right?
So it's that deep.
It's that deep. They don't recognize you anymore. You talking about you don't want to have toxic conversation, you don't want to gossip, you don't want to do this, and these are things we've been doing for I don't know how long, right? It's like, well, who is he? And I'm sure that you might even get a reaction like, who does he think he is? You know, because you think of yourself completely differently than the way that they've known you, and so you really have to. This is one of the reasons why a lot of people, to be honest with you, don't want to do the work. It's not that they don't realize it needs to be done, but there's a level of isolation that comes with growth until you reorient and find a new group of people. You know, like in our community, the Liberian community per se, I know there are people from all other communities that might listen to your podcast, but I'm just going to speak about Liberian community. I think it's common in other places, what I'm going to share. There are people who will look at, let's say, EJ, you had a best friend in 10th grade, and then you're in college now and you guys have grown apart. And they'll say, and then let's say you go to grad school and you have a new close friend, not necessarily best friend, but a new close friend, and you and the one from college fell apart. And they'll be like, well, now I don't want, you can't keep friends, or, you know, and they kind of look at it in a disparaging way. But I will say, there's nothing wrong with having lifelong friends. But if your friend circle is exactly the same as it was when you were in high school, it means to me, there might be a lack of growth, right? Your friend circle should be changing as you grow. There are going to be some core relationships there. Like I have friends that I grew up with, and I love those friendships, but those friendships have shifted over the years, right? They might have been at the center of my understanding of myself and like the core relationships I relied on. But as I grew and I shifted and I changed, there were other people incorporated into the mix so that they could meet these other new needs that I had for conversation or for support, right? And here's an example. In our community, you'll find this very prevalent as well. When I was okay, well, let me not talk about myself because I don't want my friend to feel bad. But there's situations where, like, let's say you have a friend and the person is very religious. You know, we have
Yes.
these like hyper religious groups within the Christian community, right?
Uh-huh.
And when you guys are in college or grad school, you guys are very, very close. And the closeness is based on this shared belief system. And
Correct.
as you guys encounter problems, how you cope with it and solve the issues is you have prayer groups, you get on prayer lines, and you know, as solutions emerge, you say, "Oh, God has done it again. The miracle has happened," and so you guys have this shared thinking. But as let's say you go on deeper into your studies and you start to understand yourself and realize, okay, yeah, prayer is good, but there are decisions that I'm having to make along with the prayers that will result in certain solutions, right? It's not just about the prayer. And so now your friend comes to you with her story about, oh, EJ, this, that happened. And she's like, let's just pray. So you're pray. Then no discussion on solution focusing now. So there's no secondary like, so we prayed, okay, now what steps are we going to take to do something different to get a different result? She don't want to have that conversation. She's like, we pray, God will take care of it, right? How long are you and her going to continue to be able to be like life partners navigating life if she's looking to just leave it at, oh, go fix it, and you're like, okay, well, we prayed, yes, that's good, but let's look at what choices we need to make different. At some point, this thing is going to come to a head where it's not going to work anymore. So you're going to need a new friend who has that same kind of thinking that you have of solution finding, right? Not to let the spiritual friend go per se, but I need something more. And so your friend circle should kind of shift as you mature. And you know, if it doesn't, that's fine, because one of the things I want to share is like there's no one right way to do life, and there's no one right way to do self-love, and there's no one right way to do self-care. Remember, you were talking about how when you were younger, you would go without feeling hungry, right? That satiety gland that tells us that we're full it has different thresholds for each person. It's not the same for everybody. Not everybody needs to eat 3 meals a day. Some people really can live off of one meal. And some people can go a couple of days, like 2 days, don't eat, but they'll drink water, juices, and things
Yeah.
like that, and they'll feel fine. And so I think we want to be careful as we're kind of navigating our journeys to know that it's yours. EJ, you might have been a child that could go a whole day and have a single meal and be satisfied. There's no
Mm-hmm.
need to overfeed you. If you're telling me, oh, mom, I have a headache or something like that, or my vision's blurry, or I'm feeling tired, or whatever, then I'm like, okay, let's eat something small. Maybe that's what you need. But each child is different and each person is different. So when you were talking earlier about how, some people have never experienced love, first of all, love looks different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
For some people, love is friendship, and that's like the greatest love.
Yeah.
For some people, romantic love that looks similar to what's in the movies. But let's be real, most people don't ever experience neither one of those. They have a very monochromatic, day to day, let's get through life together kind of love. And it's sufficient for many people, right? So there's no one way to do it.
That is so deep, and you said that, I was having a conversation with somebody years ago, and we were trying to define love. And for me, because I'm this person who, for me, everything is like simple and practical. I don't like to do too much. And I told them, I said, love for me is a decision. It
Yeah,
was never a feeling.
yeah.
Because I chose to be in love with this person. I chose to be in love with this person. I chose to stay, and I was ready to leave. I left. And they were like, what do you mean? I said, it's for me, it's always been a decision. I don't have, people say I had a butterfly and my stomach tense up, and I'm like, oh my God, no, 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 no. I see the person, I like the person, I walk up to them, I give them my intentions. If it worked for them, we go on. If it stopped working, we'll move on. And so, you being a coach and you doing all the great things that you do, how have you been able to work with your clients or even people to nurture their self-love?
So the first thing is, I think helping people come up to an understanding of, like, to assess where they are in that journey, right? Um, for most people, the way in which you're able to relate to yourself and to relate to other people starts with your attachment patterns, and that's based in childhood. So
Mm-hmm.
your first primary caregiver, it could have been a parent or grandparent or someone else, whoever took care of you when you were born, maybe up until like maybe a year old. The way in which they responded to you creates a general outlook on the world for you. For example, there's 4 types of attachment. There's secure attachment, insecure attachment, anxious attachment, and I forgot the 4th one. But you can Google those, and you can look them up. There's a lady named Heidi Priebe on YouTube who is an excellent educator around attachment styles. And so one of the first things I like to kind of help people understand is where you are in this grid. Like, what attachment style do you have? And help you identify where you got it from. Because some of these things, you can't, like, you had no, it wasn't your fault. Like, you had nothing to do with it, right? You were an infant. And for some people who have like secure attachment patterns, they have a general outlook where, people are generally good. The world is generally a safe place. They have boundaries. They operate in relationships generally with good communication, and they have good self-esteem, right? Then you
Mm-hmm.
have people with insecure attachment or anxious attachment, and those are going to be your kids who were not catered to consistently. And what that could look like is, being left alone to cry for long periods of time, not being fed on a regular schedule, being left wet for a really long period of time, or the primary caregiver's presence being inconsistent in the child's life, right? And so what that does, it sets down a template in your mind for how to relate to people. So insecure people, so it's not like you're insecure in terms of self-esteem, you're insecure in terms of your attachment style. Those people might come off like kind of anxious or insecure attachment. People who have insecure attachment, they'll be anxious every time you leave them. They'll be texting you a lot, calling you a lot. Where are you, EJ? When are you coming back? And that kind of thing. And for someone who has a secure attachment style, that's going to feel very laborious, and they're going to be like, oh my gosh. Now you also have people who have um, certain attachment styles where they just emotionally shut down. They're like, I can't depend on people, because when they were little, people left them to fend for themselves, right? And you're going to find this, like, I'm just like, okay, yeah, people left them to fend for themselves. So they grow up believing that they cannot depend on people. So they tend to be hyper independent. hyper independent in relationships and just in life in general. And so they don't they'll come off like emotionally unavailable in the relationship, right? And so it's important to know where you fit on the attachment grid so that you can decide, is this something you want to work on, or you feel like, you know what, I'm good with it like this. I'm just going to find somebody who complements this attachment style.
Mm-hmm.
The challenge with that is, if you don't have awareness of the dangers of your particular attachment style, you can do a lot of harm to the partner, right? So you can become like, clinginess can become abusive very quickly. You know,
Yeah.
the other person can feel very smothered. They can feel very controlled and things like that. And so it's important for you to know where you are. So the first thing, that's what I do with people. We do assessments, and then we kind of review them together and kind of get an understanding of where you are. And then I'll ask you a lot of questions about, how do you think this came to be? Most people know. They know. They just don't have the vocabulary for it,
Popularity.
right? And then once we've kind of done the assessment, I'm going to ask you now, what is it that you want? Like, what is the reason that you're here? Like, what are you hoping to achieve? And you think, oh, I want to get into a healthy relationship. Okay, well, what does that look like? Because a lot of times what we think is healthy is actually not what we're attracted to.
Oh.
Yeah, so a lot of people say, oh, I want an emotionally intelligent person. Emotionally intelligent people have conversations at a different level, and they want you to talk to them at a deeper level. They want to ask you how you're feeling, and oh, I'm fine is not a sufficient answer.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you have to have some emotional vocabulary to communicate with someone who has emotional intelligence, right? You have to also be comfortable being in your feelings and talking about the discomfort that you're feeling and things like that. So if you're someone who's not, being with someone who's emotionally intelligent will be very laborious for you, because they're going to force you to do that work. They're going to keep pressing, and you'll be, oh, I read their feelings. You know,
Yeah.
I've seen that in couples therapy, where couples are like one partner said, oh, how dare she just talk about her feelings, or how dare he just talk about his feelings? You know, I tired the same feeling I had yesterday, I got it today. It's like, no, not
Nah.
really, right?
Yeah, you need to tell me what's going on.
All right. So once we kind of do the goal setting and we get clear on what it is we're working towards, then we start doing the actual therapeutic exercises. And most of it is like, I want you to develop awareness of things that you're doing that are not serving you, and then replacing that behavior. So that's cognitive behavioral therapy, replacing that behavior with something that will serve you. And you get to decide what those things are that will serve you. And then we just meet on a weekly basis, and I check in, give you maybe new exercises, you might tell me, oh, I tried this thing and this was the result, and or I encountered this challenge, and we'll talk through that and see if there's new learning in the things that you're doing as you're going through it.
And a lot of times, I think we've heard this before. I think we talked about it earlier. It's like, love yourself. You need to pamper yourself, take yourself on dates, do all these things. And people hear it all the time. And I think sometimes it's easier said than done, because a lot of people don't understand when you say you have to love yourself. And so when we tell people these things, there are a lot of things that prevent people from loving themselves. And if you can then touch on some of these things that that can really, that can be a barrier for someone to actually love themselves.
Okay, so here's the thing, right? We got to be clear. There's a difference between self-care and self-love, right?
Hmm.
Your self-love is something intrinsic, it's inside of you, right?
Okay.
It's how you see yourself, how you value yourself, and how you think of yourself in order for you to meet your needs, right? So that's your self-love piece. Your self-care piece are things that you do to maintain your well-being. So whether it's
Hmm.
your mind, your body, your sexual lifestyle, your spiritual life, all of those things, the things that you do. Like, people don't realize that going to church is self-care. Balancing your budget to make sure you're not broke at the end of the month is self-care,
A
right?
big one.
Yeah. Making micro decisions every day to not do things you don't want to do is self-care, because that's honoring your spirit, right? Speaking up for yourself at work is self-care. So manicures and pedicures also is nice, but those are very important self-care steps that you're taking as well. So some of the things that get in the way of people practicing self-care, one is a lack of knowledge, or self-love is a lack of knowledge, or both, right? So a lack of knowledge is one. And another thing that gets in the way of us loving ourselves and also taking care of ourselves, I would say is unrealistic expectations, right? So because we're in a world filled with social media, the soft life, I don't even know what to call it. The soft lifestyle has kind
Yeah.
of taken over. And a lot of times when we think of soft life, we think of like traveling, designer things, and all this other stuff. And the truth of the matter is that aesthetic should be inspiring to you. It's not really meant to be lived out. If you're a normal person, average person, not normal, your average person working your little 9 to 5, got your family to take care of, you can't really be jet setting, you know, and wearing the latest Louis Vuitton slippers and robe and Versace, like, come on. Those things are meant to entertain you, but unfortunately, people have kind of taken them to heart and are really trying to live that life, and as a result, may be causing more harm to themselves than good financially. Right? Another big one, and this is particularly true of women Black women specifically, but women of color in general. But let's talk about Black women first. Historically speaking, Black women all over the globe have been at the bottom of the social totem poles. We've also been the workers in our families, right? Um, and this is consistent whether you're on the continent, in the Caribbean, in the U.S. We've been the worker bees. When education first became a reality for normal people, regular day-to-day people, it was the boys that got to go to school first, and the girls was kept home to take care of the houses and take care of our dad and stuff. And even in families that are highly, it wasn't, oh, these people are so sophisticated, they're educated. Like my dad was a very exposed man. My father went to school in Spain. He was a medical surgeon. I mean, he was a doctor, is a surgeon. My father still expected that when he entered the house, we will stop what we were doing and come to the door and bring Papa slippers and his drink. He's like, go to school, but bring the drink and bring the slippers to the door. And so even in families where you expect people to kind of treat their children with a little bit more equality, that was not the case for a lot of us. And we grew up being trained to work for the families, work out in the world, work for the community. When there's a funeral and there's a wedding, they don't call any man and say, oh, and John, you bringing fried chicken, or Mary, you bringing the soup. They don't call them. So in addition to all the other work that's being done, there's an expectation that you will also contribute to the community, the churches. I mean, look at the churches. Who cleans the churches? Women. Who decorates the churches? Women. And so historically, we have been the workers and the laborers. And so because of that, and I'm not saying men don't work, I'm just saying in our societies, there's an extra expectation of women laboring.
Yes.
And so because of this, we have internalized a lot of us seeing our value tied to our work, tied to our productivity. And so when you do stop working, and I've been a victim of this so many times, when you do stop working for like a week or two, there's a little panic that can kind of set in, like, oh, I got so much stuff to do, right? The roof's going to fall if I don't go back to work soon, or, things are going to fall apart at home if I'm not there to put the kids' outfits together. And, and some of this stuff is of course not real, but when you are having a traumatic response to something that you've been indoctrinated in for so long, it feels very real to you. It's like I have friends who, when we're going on girl trip, they will cook for their husband for like a whole week because she's not going to be there. Like he's grown, he can't put
You and I
something.
eat. You're not supposed to eat. Okay.
Well, it's like it's
Like,
crazy, but this is the reality for a lot of women. And so when you talk about practicing self-care, when you not do all that labor and you finally get home and you finally got the kids to bed and you sit down, who gonna first thing on it? You know what I mean? It's like I just want to shower, hit the bed so that I can start this rat race again tomorrow. And so that's why for women, and specifically Black women, self-care is a revolutionary act, is a political stance that you're taking to say, I'm not going to be the laborer. If you guys won't jump in and help, their labor will not get done. I'm not a mule, And for Black women in America, specifically African-American women or Liberians that have ties to African-American culture in terms of history, there's generational trauma that's been passed along that you may
yeah.
not be aware of, that has you deeply ingrained in your psyche believing that if you don't work, if you don't produce, you don't have value. And we have to push back against that.
That is super, super, super serious because I think I had a conversation with one of my friends who married. She's really she's I call her a minister. She's very savvy when it comes to the Bible. She preaches, she do stuff. But she's very in tune with herself as a woman.
Excellent.
And what yeah, very in tune with herself as a woman. And we're having this conversation. She has three girls. And and once somebody has said to her one day, you have all these girls. When do you think you're gonna give your husband a boy? And that triggered her. Because for her, she said, okay, that came from another woman. That came from a black woman. Are she trying to tell me that my three girls has no value? And so I remember her calling me and we're having this conversation and she going on and on and on. And I just had to tell her, I said, you can't, I'm sorry, I'm not, don't take it too deep because that's what she knows.
Mm-hmm.
That's her expectation. That's what her values. This is what has been drained into her from generation to generation. That for her, a family is not complete until there is a boy. Because the other thing is, oh, who's gonna carry the man name? And I remember her telling me, she said, that's not my responsibility.
Yeah, so the
That
lady in the story, she sees her value in her life
yes,
being tied to her ability to produce a male heir to her.
that's it for her husband. And it's like because my friend doesn't have that, so she's like less of a woman. Because it's like, and I'm like, but did your husband talk? I'm like, for me, I want to like understand this whole thing. And she's
This
like, no, I just think it's just one of these people who see you in church and ain't got nothing to say. And they just say the things that is so, but us talking about that, it's like, I think when you have, if she wasn't someone who was in tune with herself, love herself as a person, respect herself as a woman, that would have been an issue for her.
EJ, today in our communities, whether here or in Liberia, there are women who are being abused because they're not able to give birth.
Mm-hmm.
They're not able to have children. It might be even a problem where maybe the spouse has a low sperm count and he's not able to produce a child, but that's never brought up, And so I would say, you can take the man out of the country, you can't take the country out of the man. Like we are deeply attached to our culture, whether we realize it or not. I mean, deeply. It's like even Liberian males that came here at age 12, you would think that they would be so different from their predecessors, from their fathers and their uncles. Let me tell you something. Culture, it seeps through your skin
Yes.
and goes. I mean, it's so deeply ingrained that our males in our Gen X, they're no different from our males in
They're not our
the
fathers.
generations prior to or the
Yeah.
boomers. That they're very similar and they're ascribing and aspiring to behave in the same way. So I'm not surprised at all. I will just share this with you. I spent, gosh, I think I spent 8 years in Liberia. And one of the things that I did work on while I was there is there was a bill we were trying to put on the floor to make female genital mutilation illegal in Liberia. And we fought for years and couldn't get the bill on the floor. We couldn't even get on the floor. It couldn't get scheduled. And guess who was fighting us?
The women.
Liberian women.
Yeah.
Because the people who are the custodians of that particular practice are women. And they make money off of it,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And so although we are also the ones that suffer from that practice, sometimes our greatest enemies in progress are ourselves. One's limitation in terms of self-awareness becomes a wall of progress for entire generations.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's self-awareness is really, really important because it's like one of these things where if you lack self-awareness, it's like, how they cattle horses in parks in New York, in Times Square and on Park Avenue, where the horse got a thing on the eye.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
It can only go where someone else is
So
pulling it.
yeah.
And so without self-awareness, that's how you are moving in the world. You've got covers on your eyes and you don't even realize it.
And I think is also the fact where it deals with your overall persona. Because the moment your eyes are open, like the moment you take that thing off the horse realizes that, oh, look at all these people. Oh my God, these people want to touch me. I can go over there. I can go over there. I can do this. I can do that. And then everybody starts to stand there and just stare at you. Like, what's wrong with you? Are you okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're like, "No, I'm okay. You're not okay. You're the one something going on." But when we'll talk about self-love, but how does self-love impact mental health and our overall well-being?
Well, you just kind of touched on it a little bit.
Uh-huh.
So, if you have that awareness of self, that is the foundation of loving yourself, you now start to be able to say, I'm okay in this area, but I'm not okay in that area. Right. For
Yeah.
example, I have a client, she's from the Caribbean, and their culture is very similar to ours in terms of how we see and stigmatize mental health issues. And this lady's daughter is clearly depressed, and her daughter is struggling with obesity as a result. She's also engaging in skin picking behavior because she's anxious. And yet, the mother, even though she's seeing all those things, she cannot come to that understanding that there's depression in her child. And how I got her to come around to seeing it, we started to talk about how she handles life's difficulties. What does she do when things are not going her way? And how she came to me, things had gone her way. She experienced some trauma. And so I was asking, like, in the past, how have you handled these things? And for the most part, she used spirituality. She also drank a little bit. But she internalized a lot of it, just kept to herself. And guess what she did? She ate when she was
Mm-hmm.
feeling down. And I was able to kind of help her connect the eating through time periods with the different trauma she had experienced through different time periods. And so she was like, oh, I thought I was just hungry. I'm like, no. I mean, how can you just sporadically be hungry in these particular times and like eating excessively? Anytime you're eating excessively, you're doing anything excessively that's not a
Yeah.
natural appetite, there's something underneath it, right? And so it was through that process of kind of timelining different things that happened to her, timelining different behaviors that she had encountered or she was practicing. Then she was able to kind of look to the daughter and be like, oh, I think I've taught her how to cope in the same manner. Right. And so your ability to love yourself will allow you to examine your mental health. Like if your desire to be all you can be, like I always tell people, think about yourself as a baby and think of yourself also as the mother of that child, right? We love our children most of the time unconditionally. Well, actually, conditionally a little bit, but we love our children. We want the best for them. So if you see yourself as the mother in the child and you want the best for your child, if your child is lacking in a particular area, you want help for that child in that area, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so as you grow in awareness, you're going to, I mean, as you grow in self-love, you're going to naturally grow in awareness. And like the two things kind of go hand in hand, right? So you're going to start looking in like, I'm unhappy. Why am I unhappy? What is it that I need? How can I get that need met? So, okay, I need to talk to someone. I've been feeling kind of down. I'm not feeling too alright. My heart heavy. Those are
Mm-hmm.
words that our people use to describe different levels of melancholy all the way up to depression. And it's with that compassion for yourself, you start digging into those things and trying to find healing. But if you keep saying, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, but you're lashing out at the people around you, you're yelling at your children, you're snapping at people at your job, you're not fine. Your face tired. The one like Bruno told me, say, I just ugly.
Mm.
Ah, look at you.
That's okay.
I'm
Okay.
like,
So
yeah, I just ugly. I'm like, no one is frowning all the time. It's not a natural state.
yeah.
So what's underneath it? And it's a very difficult conversation to have with our people because the idea of having a mental health challenge or mental health disease is highly stigmatized even till today. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's something that people will even be like, oh, don't tell nobody. Or I'm like, of course not. I'm a licensed clinician. Our conversations are confidential. And even something, people are so afraid to take medication for their mental health. People who direly need it. People who are experiencing postpartum depression.
Yep.
Medication can be a huge game changer for you between wanting to chunk your baby in the water
Mm-hmm.
and holding it up close. And people are so afraid. I'll be like, take the medicine, don't tell nobody. Right?
It's so important because I think when these things are introduced to us and we have the opportunities to have these conversations, we get to see that, oh, I'm not the only one.
Mm-mm.
There are other people like me. And I
Mm-hmm.
had a coworker one time. Coworker she had twins, and when she had the twins, like 3 months later, her husband had to go to a different country. He was in the military, and we just know she just had the baby, so we would text her back and forth. And I texted her one day, and she was like, Edwin, it's a lot going on. The babies are crying. Da, 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 da. And I asked her, I said, do you need help? And she said, what do you mean? I said, do you need help? She said, I kind of need help. I said, okay, I have my aunts. My aunt love kids. Um, I will call her and I'll get back to you like in 30 minutes. I call my aunt. My aunt said, show my aunt. My aunt became her mother.
That's awesome.
And she was like, how did that happen? I said, my culture, that's what we do. When I'm reaching out to you, because I said, so I just explained to her, I said, so our culture, this is what happens. You have the baby. For those who have the opportunity, the mothers will come and help them, be with them for a certain amount of time, so they can get on their feet and all that kind of stuff. I said, but just texting with you back and forth, I realized that you didn't have that. And
Yeah.
I know my aunt loved kids, and she babysat all our kids. So I knew she would not have a problem going there and helping you out. And my aunt was there with her until I think the kids were maybe a year old.
Well, you touch on
And
something very good though, Edwin. Like, a good part of loving yourself is being able to ask for help,
yeah.
and being attuned to your needs will help you discern where you need help. It's not a
But
sign of
also,
weakness.
yeah, but also, isn't it also playing fact? Because I think it's like when you have done the work on you, you understand when people, if someone say, I'm okay, you're like, are you okay or are you okay?
Yeah.
So I do that to my friends a lot. I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, oh, I'm fine, though. Are you okay? Like, what's up?
Yeah.
How's life? And I start to ask these questions. They be like, you always want to know everything. I said, I just want to make sure that you are good.
Yeah.
Because if you're not good, we all might not be good. Because we might be
Mm.
in a group chat texting and thinking we're having a good time. And you're mad and you're having a whole meltdown, and we just disregarding your feelings.
It's
And
true.
so as we separate, well, I would say separate our lives, we move on with all the things that we're doing. Everybody's just having this great, we'll talk about the social media. But I want us to really go into the social media a little bit. There are so many ways I feel that social media impact us. So many ways. There's so many things happening. We talk about the rich aunties, the what they call, what I saw these other guys, they call them the what? They call them the foxy granddads, the 50-year-old with the abs and the I said, what is happening? Don't these people have grandkids to take care of? What's up?
Y'all on your own.
But in so many ways, how has social media impacted our ability to cultivate our self love?
Hmm. So I don't think social media by itself has impacted our ability to really cultivate self-love. I think that if
Mm-hmm.
you already have a fragile template of self-love, it'll be
Yeah,
easily shaken by social media or any other thing, you know? Um, whereas somebody who already has a sense of love for themselves that's very intact, social media becomes entertainment, right? And then generally, people who have a strong core in terms of self love have strong relationships with healthy friendships, you know,
yeah,
and healthy because they demand that for themselves, right? And people who have a lesser amount of love for themselves or lack awareness of themselves tend to look outside of themselves for fulfillment, for understanding, a lot of times you will see that manifest in a lot of the live streaming of like personal issues and discussing things that really maybe should be dealt with in a family sphere out in the public arena, you know, just a lot of exposure of things that, you know, someone else would not probably do because they understand that you're kind of putting yourself at risk by putting all that information out there.
yeah,
But I think that it really varies from person to person. It really depends on where you are in your life. You know, like for some people, social media has been a very positive thing. You know, it's been an outlet for me. It's been a huge outlet for me. Very cathartic. You know, I went through an experience in 2016 where I lost my baby, and it took me a long time to kind of heal around that. And part of the tail end of that journey was I was able to talk about it and tell people, this is what I went through. These are the things that I did that were helpful, and so on and so forth. And it was very good for me. It was very cathartic. And I met a lot of other people who went through similar things through social media, right? And so it was a positive thing for me. But I do understand and I see how it can be very dangerous for people who are very young, like teenagers. I get teenage clients who don't realize that social media is not real. It's not real life. It's snippets
Yep.
of real life, and the best snippets of someone's real life, and only that. And so you can't really compare yourself to that, so in that way, I think it affects younger people, but for older people, it just depends on where you are in your life and how you're using it. But I do know, I know one conversation we had before, we were talking about how people can feel jealous, looking at other people's feeds and things like that. And I was saying, be inspired by their feed, because the things that you're seeing were accomplished by human beings. And if you want to, you can accomplish them too. The question is,
Yep.
what are the steps that you need to take to do the things that they're doing? And then do it. It's the do it piece where most people fall apart. They don't want to do
Yeah.
the work of actually, what's necessary to get the same things. So my question is always, then, do you really want it?
Sometimes I just like the way it look. I'm like, oh, okay, good for you.
Exactly. There are
But you
lots
know
of
what?
things I
But
don't.
you know what? I'm just gonna block you because every time I see you living your best life, I think like, well, what kind of work I'm doing? How he can be on 5 vacations? No, I gotta block you because it
You
making me
need to
question
really,
myself.
so creative. Like, there are people traveling this world on point, and I am one of them. You get the
So
right
yeah,
car.
I met people who got the red credit card and how to do it, and they're
Yeah.
traveling on their points and get the best hotels and first class. I was like, yeah,
It
I
just
met a
requires
couple.
research. It requires research.
They explained that to me. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna get, but then that's the other thing where you got to do the work.
The work.
So you got to get there. I got to understand. I'm like, okay, yeah, I will come back to you. Can I text you more information? It sounds a lot.
It
It
is a
sounds
lot.
like a lot. It sounds like a
I
lot.
will
I'm
say
like,
this.
yeah.
My mother used to tell me when I was growing up, never desire what you see other people with, because you don't know if you're willing to do what they had to do to get it. She's like, look at what they have to do first and then decide if you want that end goal, because you probably
Exactly.
don't.
I was it's not like to say you got to put this and do it this and you got to try. Or these people who have they mapped out the federal holidays based on
I
certain
love that.
times, and
Yes.
they're able to travel, and they will get like 5 days over here, and they'll get 1 week
I
over
actually
here.
have
But they
that in my
really
book.
don't. But they really don't have PTO. It's really regular days, but they know how to. I said, you see, I can sit down and do all that. That's a lot for me.
I actually have that in my book. It's like how to take 14 days of paid vacation and turn it into a 30-day
Yeah.
worth of travel. And it's like really just mapping it out. I didn't create it. I saw someone else do it, and I just augmented it for 2025 so that people could be able to use it. But yes, it's a
Yeah.
thing.
Okay. Yeah. I've seen it on Instagram. What this girl was talking about. I was like, what? And she's like, this day, if you take it on this day, on this Tuesday, because I'm like, yeah, yeah, no, I would just take my PTO.
See?
That would be fine. I ain't going. I got too much studying to be doing. I can't do that.
But okay, so the way that you handled that situation tells me a lot about your personality, right? And we have to be honest about who we are as people, and understand that certain things in life are not for us. And that's part of your self-love and
Hmm.
honoring who you are. If you're someone who's risk averse, you kind of like things to just be the way that they are. You like kind of like the smoothness to your day. You're not really interested in those after hours and all that extra labor. You got to be honest with yourself. So then when every little opportunity comes across your social media feed to go do something different, don't waste your time, because you know that's not who you are, right?
Nah, what? Oh,
But then there are people who are the opposite. They
oh
like
yeah.
adventure. They like having 10,000 things in the pot at the same time, and two different stove burners going, and they get adrenaline from all that. Those people need to feed that in themselves to keep their spirit alive, So we need to honor who we are. One of the things, and I'll stop talking after this, but one of the things that I love to work with my clients on, especially the ones that tell me they want to marry, I'm like, let's figure out how you can love, honor, and respect yourself first. Then we worry about finding a partner.
Mhm.
Because if you can't do those things for yourself,
So how you gonna do it for
you may
somebody else?
find a partner, but you're going to struggle in the relationship because, especially for women, one of the things I absolutely adore about men will take care of themselves no matter what.
Oh yeah.
For the most part, they will make sure their needs are met. And so, if you're a female who does not have a strong sense of self, and you go into a marital situation where people relax in marriage because marriage seems permanent, you'll quickly find yourself very unhappy because the labor of meeting your needs, of keeping yourself happy, you thought someone else will come to do it, and he's like, "Oh no, I got to do that for myself," you know. So
You said that and what Instagram again, Instagram feed that said that no one is responsible for your happiness. You are the only one that is responsible for your happiness. So you saying that because we know a lot of people who they get married, they have kids, and they get into this relationship where, oh, he or she is gonna make me
mm,
happy, and I'm so happy.
I want to
And then
know. I
and
speak
then
from experience.
when it's chocolate, like what can say when you whole thing chocolate, then you say, oh, but I was doing everything I was supposed to do, and everything was fine. How did this person just do this to me? And I was like, well, you said he or she is responsible for your happiness, so they just
Well,
turn
to
it
be
off.
fair, Edwin, this is what we're taught.
Yeah,
You know, to be fair, like there are not a lot of images that you can look at in your real life growing up
true,
of women who behaved differently,
true.
right? And then not only that, as you're being talked to as a young woman or young girl coming up, they tell you these are the things that you're supposed to do in order to keep your home happy. Never in that conversation does it come up that, oh, you're supposed to keep yourself happy too,
Mm,
right? Like, or prioritize your happiness. In fact, when you do that, you usually get whipped. They call this being selfish,
yeah.
self-centered. You get beaten for that behavior, or it was she's too awful, she too this, she too that. And so as a result, you just that muscle is not strong in you, right? And then don't be a church girl.
Then you're done. Or you
But
done.
we submitting to Christ, we submitting to the husband,
The
the
husband
dog, the
submitting
children, everybody else in the house.
everybody walking on you like a floor mat.
And we think that we're being in service to Christ by allowing
Yeah.
that to happen. And so it's just now, I would say, maybe at the tail end of my mom's generation, that we start seeing women making different choices. And even me, like, I mean, my mother's a very liberated woman. I mean, one of the few Liberian women that I know. My mom was like married, got divorced, married, got divorced, and we're like, okay, I'm done. You know what I mean? But even my mom, when I wanted to get divorced, she was like, D, don't do it. Stay there. You know what I mean? And she's like, oh, she had her reasons why she was saying it, but I didn't think her reasons were good enough. Hence, I didn't listen. I mean, I listened for a little bit, but then I was like, nah, this ain't working.
That
Right.
ain't gonna work for me.
But our culture is so strong on us. It's almost like a straight jacket at times holding you in these positions. So regardless of your education level, regardless of how exposed you are, you still become victim to it. And so it's now with my generation, we're striking out at such large numbers that our daughters are like, I'm not even sure I won't marry that. Because they're like, you guys have done a terrible job of marketing the institution. It doesn't look fun. It doesn't look good. And
Yeah,
all I see is you suffering in it. So why should I do
yeah,
that again?
you see that like my niece had a conversation, law student, A student, all through everything. And that's one thing she told. We're just chit chatting one day, like to mess with her. And she was like, I was like, oh, so who you talking to? She said, talking to. She said, I want none of that. She said, well, I don't see y'all go through and all that drama. She said, oh no, I'm good. She said, I want to be my great lawyer. I want to get my this, get my that, get me a little dog that's gonna love me unconditionally, and I am fine. And I looked at her honestly, for a second. I almost went in with, are you serious? And then I cut myself. I was like, okay, don't do that to that young lady. Let the lady express herself. Let her do what she want to do. And I just say, yeah. At the end, I just told her, I said, but if anything changes, it's okay.
Oh,
If
that's
you get,
awesome.
if you get to a space where you be like, okay, maybe I say it's okay. If it change, it's okay. But for now, if this is what you want, it's fine. And I was talking to her mom, and she was so nice. Because I call right off the phone, I call her mom. I said, okay, I'm doing reconnaissance right now because I know how you can act. This is what's going to happen. This is what she's saying. Da, 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 da. Please don't start grilling this girl and asking her too many questions because the conversation after came about her mom keep on asking her, so who are you dating? Like, why I don't bring nobody around, and blah, blah, blah. And so that's when I was like, let me have a conversation with her. She's like, really? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, she see what's the best one? Which one is the best one that she don't see around her?
It's sad, but it's true. I mean,
It's true. It's
our
bad, but
our communities have done a terrible job of
terrible.
marketing marriage. And if we really are honest with ourselves, those of us who have been married, those of us who may still be married, we can kind of see what these kids are talking about.
Yeah, the
You
kids are
know,
being honest, but they're just like so. And it was like, but even the ones who are there, we see what's going on. We see what's happening. Even the ones who are still in it and they're thriving through it, we can see what's happening. But y'all think we don't see what happened when we come to Thanksgiving?
and they
Y'all think we
forget
don't?
that the children live with them, so their
You,
kids are there 24/7. They're feeling all the
yeah.
vibes in the house. They're hearing things that you think that they're not hearing. They
Mhm.
know what's happening.
One of my friend who got a divorce, when she finally told her teenager she had the kids, they were like, oh, we thought you guys had been divorced a very long time. Mommy, you did well, but we knew this was going to happen. And she was like, what do you mean? The little boy told his mom, he said, mommy, you remember when you stopped doing the gardening in front of the house? And she was like, what? He said, that's when I knew you were done. He said, because you gave up on everything, even your gardening, the things that used to make you happy during the summer and during the spring, you stopped doing it.
But I
And
think we need to. I would like to see us reframe divorce and separation as new opportunities for more life, because I
yeah,
think the stigma that's attached to it also is responsible for people remaining in relationships when they're not healthy and subjecting their children to those unhealthy relationships, which leads to unhealthy relationship patterns for the children, right? um One of the things that, I came out of my marriage believing was that I just wasn't a good match for my ex-husband. There are certain
hmm
things he needed and wanted that I just couldn't provide, or I didn't want to provide, and vice versa. We just weren't a
yeah,
good match. He's not a bad person. I'm not a bad person. We're just not meant to be together. And so I think on the heels of that understanding, you can move forward in your life and kind of focus on, okay, well, what is it that will be a good match for me? What is
hmm
it that I want to see in my home? What is it that I want my child to look at and be like, oh, I want the same thing my mom and my stepdad have? You know what I
right.
mean? What is that going to look like? And who do I need to be? Who do I need to show up as to deliver that? And then seek out a partner who can fit that mold, if that even is what you decide to do, you know?
Yeah.
Because one of the things that people forget is, like, just because you're divorced don't mean you dead. Like, you could date, you can have a
You
very
do.
full dating life. Lord knows I have. And be just as happy of going with your business. Like, marriage doesn't have to be the goal for everybody.
And it's said, I think it's for me, and I think I ingrained it in myself when I got divorced. I was just like, okay, so this is not the end, because no one go into marriage expecting to get a divorce. So
Hmm.
now it has happened. So what do you do? Do we sit here and cry all day and stress about everything that you lost, or do you get up and try to figure this thing out and get back into it? Of course, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be hard, because when I started dating, I said, these people are crazy out here. You are insane. This is what the streets look like. Oh no, I'm good. I'm good. I was like, no, this is not gonna work. But it's hard. You have to put in the work. You have to do what you have to do. But at the end of the day, I feel for me, I felt that it gave me another opportunity for me to find the person that I wanted for me, the relationship that worked for us. There was no three party. There were no church people. There was no family. I just did my thing. And it has worked, because at the end of the day, both of us will say, yes, this is what we wanted. This is how we want our relationship to be. This is how it's going to be. And that's it. And so it working for us. And I just also came to the part where I was just like, you know what? Yes, I have a son. Hey, this is the person I'm with. This is the person I want to be with. He's like, oh, okay. Oh, but I already knew. One time we went to this place, and people, yeah, everybody was there. All your friends were there. I could tell that that person was your special friend. I
Yeah.
said, "What do you mean?" And
It's a
he was like the way y'all were acting. So you see, and for me, I'm just like, You just live your life, and this is the second time. I just feel God just gave you a second lease on life. That's what it is.
Right.
Use it and enjoy it.
That's right. So I think how I want to kind of tie this back to a conversation we're having is just like,
Uh,
things like divorce, any kind of loss gives you an opportunity to transmute your experience, to change it into something different.
yep,
And it allows you, part of that process of transmuting allows you to self-examine and redefine, right? And that whole process forces you to look inward, which is again attunement. It forces you to
yep.
get back in touch with who you really are at your core, and who you were at 20 versus who you are at 30 versus who you are at 40, completely different people. So it's necessary for you to reattune and redefine what it is that you want. And so that whole process is a process of self-love, right? Because
Yep.
now when you figure out who you are now in this space, you figure out, okay, well, how do I get those needs met? Who would best meet those kinds of needs and things like that? So it's all love.
But before we end this, because it's been juicy, how can someone tell if they're truly practicing self love versus self indulgence?
So I'm trying to think. Give me an example of what you consider to be self-indulgent, because I think that's subjective.
So I would say for me, self indulgence is the fact where I'm just like, it's all about me. And I don't care what I do, how does it affect other people, what happens, it's like it's about me. Going into this, I don't care about your feelings, even a relationship. Okay, I'm just going, and whatever happens. I'm going to control this. This is how it's going to be, and you forget. But even though we say self love, because when you love yourself, you know the things that you want, but you still go in the fact where you don't respect other people's feelings when it comes to this thing that you're doing.
So I think that if you have self-awareness and you have real love for yourself, you won't treat other people like that because
Mm-hmm.
you have self-compassion. There's no
Yep.
way you can be compassionate to yourself and not able to be compassionate to other people. So if you find yourself behaving in a way that's callous and unkind, you're not operating from a space of love. Those two things are polar opposites. They cannot coexist, right? But that doesn't mean that if you're in the space of self-love, you will never hurt other people, because we're human. Sometimes you can
True.
miscalculate, or you, even in your desire to be aware, you may miss something, in someone else's experience. So um, the two things cannot really coexist. If you find yourself, and I'll say this, if you find yourself in a space where you're consistently hurting other people or you're consistently causing harm, you need to reassess where you are, because you're not operating from a place of love, not for yourself or other people. The two things just don't coexist.
You see, this has been great. And I really appreciate you always coming here, giving us so much knowledge,
Uh,
being vulnerable with us, sharing personal stories that we can tune into, and it can help us, not if it can help us as we navigate this life. Because I think this experience that we're going through, I like to call it experience. This experience that we're going through, it's challenging. Somebody said it when you were born, there's no manual.
no, there
None
is
of us have received a book
nope.
about how to navigate this life. Yeah, people have written books, self-help books to help us. But again, what your personal experiences, my personal experiences have taken us to the place who have made us who we are.
Yeah.
And so, again, we say thank you for being here with us. But before you leave, again, how can people find you? They can follow you if they want to set up sessions with you. Are they virtual and all that good stuff?
So where you can find me, so I'm on all social media platforms as Coach Delarue, and that's Delarue. Um, you can definitely find me, like, and I have like links in all of my bios where you can get in touch with me. If you click a link and it doesn't work, just send me a private message. But I will tell you, I'm most active on TikTok these days, and maybe Instagram will probably be the top two.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to share a link with EJ. Hopefully, he'll be able to post it for me on how you can sign up for my mailing list. My one-on-one sessions are remote. I don't do in-person sessions anymore. And let's see, what else did you want to know? I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Well, so thank you so much for being here with us. We appreciate you for always showing up. And of course, again, this was the conversation Outspoken Opinionated. I am the host, and I had Delarue Brumskine here with us, giving us some good self love self-help, self-care information. So you guys go out there, love yourself, okay? Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye. Yeah, people. So y'all be up in here just doing your what you want to do. But without further ado, of course, this is Thursday evening. We're gonna have a good time. We had a great conversation with Ms. Brumskine, and I want to tell you guys, let's keep it up and check us again on another Thursday.